City Council, the second edition of 2018, January 23rd. Welcome and thank you for being here. I call this meeting to order. First off, I would ask that Vaughn Sullivan come down and lead us in the invocation. I want to introduce also a senior from Midwest City High School, Cadet Alexis Broderick. She's a cadet with the ROTC program, Midwest City, and she's a senior again, and she plans, and this will garner support from several, she plans to attend the Oklahoma State University after graduation. So again, welcome. Please stand for the invocation to Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you bow with me, please? Almighty God, our Creator, Sustainer of life, Father, we thank you for this occasion and the gathering of this council. Father, we ask your wisdom tonight be upon these members of this council. Father, give them discernment and wisdom that can only be given by you. Father, we ask that you continue to bless them in their service and their representation of those who live in this city. Father, they have important decisions before them tonight. I just hope that and pray that their decisions would be in line with your will and that their decisions would be in line with good of the whole for this community. Father, we know that your timing is not always our timing, and we thank you for providing. Father, grant us peace and safety. Those who are defending this nation all over the world tonight as well, give them comfort and peace as well. Thank you for this great nation. We ask a prayer of wisdom and discernment be upon our leaders of this great land and this great state of Oklahoma. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, forgiveness from sin that we have through his death on the cross. It's in his holy name I pray. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Photo op. Got it? Thank you. Okay, we've completed the holiday season. Are there any community-related announcements going around the horseshoe?
We do have the daddy-daughter dance, which is scheduled for January 10th. February. Boy, we just can't get that right tonight, can we? Just something about that. At the Reed Center, and we have, Vaughn, we have 3 sessions, is that correct? Yes, sir. Okay. And I'm sure one's probably sold out, so do they just contact the community center? Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay, we do have a proclamation to do tonight. So, Ms. Kirkland, could you meet me at the podium, please? This is a particularly hard one. Dana Kirkland has worked for the city of Midwest City for almost 40 years, 36 and some change, right? And I can honestly stand here and tell you that there has not been an employee before, now, or ever again that has touched more citizens in this community than this young lady right here. Her and I got the, not only are we know each other for a long time. She was good friends with my mom. Her daughter worked with my mom at the Planet Bowling Alley. And so we go way back. Then we got the opportunity to work together in neighborhood services for a period of 4 years. And it was just gleeful the whole time we were together. We never had an issue, did we?
Nope. Not till you left.
That's why I left. But in all seriousness, it's rare to find these types of employees that give 100% of themselves to a job or task or a community. And we have one standing to my right. So with that being said, the one thing I do get to do is, as mayor, is give days. I can't give you vacation days, but I can give you a day. Whereas Miss Dana Kirkland began her career with the City of Midwest City as a receptionist for the Community Center in 1981 and retires in 2018 as Neighborhood Initiative Coordinator for Neighborhood Services. And whereas throughout her career, Dana has consistently proven to be a dedicated employee, unselfishly donating her time and efforts above and beyond her duties as noted in many letters of appreciation and recognitions from the citizens, festival, event chairmen, colleagues, supervisors, and more. And whereas from the beginning of her career, she was noted for showing an eagerness and willingness to learn and improve. And Dana, over the years, has successfully completed many hours of continuing education from community service classes to Oklahoma Gang Investigators Association training and code enforcement certification. Whereas since her promotion to Neighborhood Initiative Coordinator in 1995, Dana has worked tirelessly at all hours of the day and night to ensure successful quality experiences for our citizens and to make Midwest City a great place to live and work. Whereas she has made such an impact during her service that she's become like family and committed to make neighborhoods safe and healthy place to raise children. Whereas Dana always responded quickly, efficiently, and effectively, and her willingness to get involved and make immediate action or take immediate action, consistently displaying her during her career, her made a foundation for her associations to lean upon. She is a value to the city, and that was a quote from our former city manager, Charles Johnson. Whereas Dana is always kind, upbeat, and willing to listen and help, is a true asset. Whereas in her 37 years as a city employee, Dana has always went out of her way to help those families and individuals who were in need and have helped wherever or whatever the material or non-material things that they needed, for which they were very grateful. Therefore, I, Matthew Dukes, Mayor of Midwest City, do hereby proclaim January 23rd, 2018 as Dana Kirkland Day. Given this under my hand this day, 23rd day of January, 2018, year of our Lord. Grand Copeland, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
You want to say a couple of things?
I just appreciate my ride I've had with Midwest City. Mike Stroh, you've been a tremendous boss. I love you. And I have tons of great friends, and they're here tonight, and you know who you are. And I'm sad to leave, but it's time.
We've got one other gift for you.
Explosive? Oh.
Fragrance.
joyful days. Been having a rough time of it, and so I thank you very much for everything. And you taught me a lot, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I didn't thank my family. I've spent a lot of time away from my family with my service to this city, which my daughter Kelly, my oldest daughter Jennifer's in Arizona at a meeting, my husband Hiram, and all my great-grandkids and soon-to-be grandkids, and my soon-to-be son-in-law and his daughter, Jonathan, Melissa, and Michael. I love you guys. Thank you. Stay right here. I just wanted to
Oh.
dress her up.
Yeah, that was on. Hot mic moment.
Did everyone hear that? And Shane.
Don't forget your day.
Oh.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take, I'm going to take executive privilege. Although we've called the city council meeting to order, we're going to deviate from normal order of business and ask that the council recess the council meeting and that we go straight to the Midwest Hospital Authority meeting. Chair to entertain a motion to do so.
Move to recess the council meeting.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor
Second.
indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I now call to order the Midwest City Hospital Authority. We do have 3 discussion items.
First item is approval of the January 9th, 2018 meeting.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is discussion, consideration of action to reallocate assets, change fund managers, or make changes in the statement of investment policy guidelines and objectives. No action is necessary on this item.
Third item.
Third item is discussion and consideration of an update report from the Alliance Health Hospital CEO, Clay Franklin, regarding certain building and operation issues at the hospital. Mr. Franklin?
Thank you very much for having me this evening, Mayor Duke, City Council members. Again, as mentioned, my name is Clay Franklin. I am the market CEO for Alliance Health Oklahoma. I'm also the CEO of Alliance Health Midwest. And since my joining Alliance Health last July, I've had the opportunity to meet with many of you, and I look forward to our continued relationship of working together. I could speak about many things tonight, but what I'm going to speak about, touch on several topics. I'm going to focus most of my comments related to around pictures that are circulating the social media of certain areas of our hospital. And I want to speak to those and, of course, open myself up to any questions that you may have. The pictures that are circulating of our hospital are of 2 primary areas, closed units of our hospital and then the kitchen of the hospital. And I'll walk through each of these areas. I want to start with the closed section of our hospital. Our hospital has an old section that was originally built of our hospital, which it used to be in many years past inpatient units. These units are closed. They've been closed for many years. Some units may have been closed for over 7 years. I've had a physician leader tell me one of the units have been closed for almost a decade. These units do not provide patient care, are not licensed to provide patient care, and they're completely separate from our active patient care areas. Regardless of the fact that they're in a separate area, they're not for visitors or for other public that are coming in, and they're in a separate area. The appearance of the rooms do not meet the expectations that I have for what a closed or unused room should look like. It should look better, definitely, than what it does. No question about that. We have taken action to make sure that the appearance of these closed rooms, that they will look better, and we are taking swift action related to that, and I can assure the council that that will occur. The second area of concern related around these pictures that are circulating in social media, and really the irresponsible comments and accusation that there is an air issue or air quality issue or environmental concerns at the hospital. And I say that it's irresponsible because it's created undue fear in our community, and that is unfounded and unbased. We have brought in an environmental consultant to our hospital last week to assess these areas, conduct an environmental assessment. We have found no reason to believe whatsoever that there's any environmental concerns or air quality concerns at the hospital. Even though we have no reason to believe that, we engaged and hired a national environmental testing firm and brought them into our great city, to our state, to conduct environmental testing, and they're conducting that today at our hospital. It is our hope we will get the initial results before the end of this week, and I would love to have the results tonight for you. Sooner the better. So hopefully we can close the narrative and let the facts start speaking to the fact that the air quality concerns at the hospital are baseless concerns, and we do not have those at our hospital. And I will, of course, share the results with the city, with our Board of Trustees as well, as soon as we get the initial results, and as well as the full written report for anybody on our city council or anybody in the city who wants that, again, including our Board of Trustees. The second area of our hospital that was photographed was our kitchen. And these pictures of our kitchen were taken after we had it was a fairly big catering event, which is actually our Board of Trustees dinner. And also, it was during that time of the year, we have other holiday functions, we had another catering event. It was at the time of the day as we finished the cafeteria and we shut down the food line and we break it down. And so these pictures in our kitchen, you will see many, not pots and pans, but you'll see many serving dishes which you keep the food in that were stacked up. At the end of all these events, these items were stored in the appropriate place, staged to be cleaned, and so it was appropriate where they were at. There was a picture of food that was uncovered in our kitchen, and the reason that you see all this food in this container, we measure, monitor, and document our food waste at our hospital. And most food services do this because I've been asked this question, is it a regulatory issue? No, it's you measure the food waste because if you're wasting too much of a certain food item, you probably want to make a little bit less of that item. So what it does, it helps manage ongoing food cost. So that is a measuring container that you saw with the picture on the floor that we put food that we're going to waste to measure before we discard that food. We had the county Department of Health come out to our hospital the day that this became more noticeable in our community from this post. It was on Thursday. Several minor findings were found by the health department surveyor. Some of those items were corrected before she left. All the items were completely corrected in just a matter of hours after she left. The following day, on Friday, there was another survey of our kitchen, and all the findings from the prior day were totally removed. No new findings were added to that. So we walked into that weekend last Friday with no findings related to anything related to our kitchen. And I think that's important to know that in this kind of environment. We've had several of you, others, a lot of community leaders come out to look at these areas. I think everybody will attest to the fact that we didn't go through, pretty them up, throw down carpet, throw down tile. You saw the way they looked, and you could compare the pictures to the areas. The black substance that is on the floor, and those who are in either rental houses ever pulled up floor, and that is not me, knows that it's mastic, which is mastic is a glue that holds tile down. It turns black. over time. Whenever you pull it up, it's going to be that color. So that is what that was, and it helped when individuals, I believe everybody would agree, who saw the areas, help provide perspective of an area versus what a frame may look like, and have the opportunity to speak, not just myself, but to our department leaders in our hospital, to the frontline employees, and get really just complete access, any room, ask any question to anyone. And so it kind of really did help provide that perspective. But I do want to reiterate, regardless of that, the appearance of closed rooms, it doesn't meet that standard. And regardless if it is what area of the hospital, the fact that it's unused whatsoever, it should have a better appearance. It should be clean, and we are taking actions to make sure that that is clean. I've rounded through the hospital, and my executive team, our leaders, throughout the weekend, throughout this happening, I stood before you a few months ago, articulating my vision for the hospital, my commitment to our culture. That was the priority, strengthening the culture of our hospital. It strengthens the culture and really strengthens our community. In our community, I get fact-checked every day by every city council member, by every board of trustees member, by everybody who's in our community. The culture is improving. I think for a lot of you who spoke to employees in our hospital would know that. At Alliance Health Midwest, we have phenomenal employees. They're so kind, so nice, and they work so very hard. The events that before us today, I don't want it to be any reflection in the work they're doing, because they are phenomenal at what they do, and they take great pride serving their neighbors, serving our citizens, serving our community. And on their behalf, I'll apologize for them that they are in this situation as representative of Alliance Health Midwest, that this is out there right now with these pictures that are circulating social media. We have began speaking obviously more, and thank you for being here tonight to kind of help articulate a little bit of our facts, help articulate the fact we brought a lot of people in, provided the hyper transparency on this situation, and also encourage anybody who has not come to the area to see the area and speak to our employees, and also see the areas where actual patient care is given. There's a phenomenal units that look really, really good, and great care is being provided. So on behalf of Alliance Health Midwest, and frankly Alliance Health Oklahoma, our commitment to that culture, our commitment to quality and patient safety remains paramount in what we're doing. And we are heading in such a positive direction, and our culture has bound us together through this situation. And I see us on the back end of this, our culture becoming stronger at our hospital, and frankly, kind of employees banding together and us helping them in that process. So I will open myself up to any questions you may have, or any questions that maybe a prior time when you're in the hospital that we did not answer, or other questions that were brought up.
Mr. Franklin, I appreciate the tour that you gave myself and Councilman Allen yesterday. I know it took some time away from your job along with your staff. I will echo that you didn't make any excuses. We picked the rooms that we went into. In fact, Ms. Price Allen was the one that was picking the rooms. You didn't dictate at all where we went. I asked you one question when we were there about whether or not any of this was on us, and you said it wasn't. Well, no. I tend to disagree with you, because I think it kind of is, as a community, that I think we all need to be on the same page and go forward, that this is a community hospital. The people of Midwest City expect it to be a safe place to go. There's a lot of our residents that this is all they've ever known. We're surrounded by a lot of hospitals. Mm-hmm. There's more coming in, but they're still reliant on that. In fact, you and I talked about the restaurant used to be a place for a lot of people to go eat, and that's dropped. Because I know there's a lot of people that live in the neighborhoods that used to go there because that was a place that they knew they could get a good hot meal. And there is the attitude out there now that a lot of people don't necessarily want to go to the hospital. And I do ask the one thing that I looked at a Medicare report, and there's some things on there that are a little troubling in the first section. And I think that it is our responsibility, along with the hospital, to work through this, because there's 11 categories on there in every single one of them. And we're talking about the biggest one I saw, well, there's two really big ones. One was the cleanliness of the rooms. That's below the standard for the state and the nation. And the other one was, would you recommend this hospital to somebody else coming back? And I think that we as a group, even though you say it's not our responsibility, I kind of think it is, that we need to probably work with you to make sure that those numbers come up. Because if we're going to continue to be a community hospital that's also a feeder hospital, we have some skin in this game.
Yes, and Congressman Byrne,
No, that's not Congressman.
I'm sorry,
I don't want to be labeled that.
He demoted you.
Councilman.
No, demote me again,
Okay.
please.
I think I'm about to get some harsh questions from him. Councilman Byrne, first of all, I welcome the partnership, and I thank you for the comments. When you're speaking about the reports that you mentioned, and when I first came up here, and I've been speaking about culture, and we have phenomenal employees. We have to make sure that, and we have added a lot of resources to the hospital, making sure they have the tools and equipment to do their job, and we are truly as one. That hospital is the community is the hospital. And so through this, there's immense amount of work, whether it be our patient experience scores, we're driving our clinical excellence agenda, with our mortality index. And I spoke about this last time, index, if it's above or below 1, that our index is below 1, which it means that patients that are expected to die are not dying, they're living because they're coming to Alliance Health Midwest. Not every hospital can say that. But think about it, the patients that are expected to die, we're saving lives because they're coming to our hospital. You know what? It's the work that the employees are doing. My job is to support them, making sure they have the resources to do it. We're on that journey to do that, but we do have work to do, and that work is occurring every day.
And I think at some point that the city and the hospital, most people don't go to the hospital unless they're sick.
Yeah.
Or they visit somebody, and it's difficult when you are sick or you're visiting somebody that's sick to really evaluate, I think, because it's kind of a captive deal, and I think it may be beneficial to both the city and to you, your organization, that as the weather gets better, maybe the city do something together jointly as an open house to let people come there and see it, and that may help with the perception, because if you've read the Facebook post, which you said you have,
Yeah.
the perception is not probably where you want it to be.
No, we're definitely on our heels with the Facebook post. Thank you, sir.
So, first off, this hospital is in my ward. And the hospital means a lot more to me than just a councilman. My grandfather's name's on a lot of plaques in there. He was, so it's a generational concern to me. I will say that I think that you have handled yourself very well through all of this. I'm not a cheerleader, but you can only do so much. We need to make sure that you've got the backings from your corporate bosses. And I think that what the city's going to see in the next 6 months is truly the commitment that the corporation has to this hospital. And if we see the positive change, this is a great opportunity to take a hospital that's a little bit long in the tooth, that needs some updating. And I think if the corporation uses this as a catalyst to fix some of the areas that were identified and move us forward and bring this hospital to a hospital that the community deserves, I think that is exactly what we expect from your corporation.
Yes, and thank you, Councilman Reed, not Congressman. I can call him Congressman. Since my arrival, the company's been very supportive. When situations like this occur, it kind of reaffirms support that I've already had. The first floor of the hospital, it's dated, structurally good. It needs more modernization. When you go up to our inpatient units, 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor, and some of you saw those, and I've worked at multiple hospitals, and they're good-looking units, very big nurses stations, present very well, very nice. There are areas that we received funding, and we need to accelerate that. as far as modernizing, especially the first floor, the main entrance when you first walk in the hospital. I think it'd work in conjunction very well with kind of reintroducing the community to the hospital and kind of these open house comments and ideas that we have. So thank you.
Mr. Franklin, I want to echo what Councilman Reed said, and I appreciate, first off, your transparency, your honesty, your willingness to get out in front of this, and I just want to make it public that I don't have a hesitation or hesitate to be a patient at that hospital, nor to take anybody in my immediate family to that hospital. I do want to take, I want everybody to make a note that Mr. Franklin's executive staff is sitting back in the back, and they personally take a lead in each one of their specialty areas in assisting Mr. Franklin in addressing this issue. They too have been working long nights and probably been on a steady Gaviscon diet, as I have. But I appreciate you appearing here. I appreciate that you're affording everyone the opportunity to come over and see that. And if you haven't, I've urged that you go see the issues so you know it firsthand. And with that being said, are there any further questions or discussions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Franklin, you know, I've had an opportunity to speak on the phone
Yes,
after
ma'am.
these photographs were released, and I want to echo the sentiment the mayor just espoused. You know, you've been very transparent. You're quick to accept responsibility for this, and we all appreciate that. I also want to say that I've had the opportunity to speak with employees of Alliance Health Midwest separate and apart from in relation to these photographs being released, and I've heard very positive things about the employment culture out there. And I believe that when you appeared before this council before and you talked to us about your plan to reinvest in the employees, I believe that that's happening. And so I want to commend you on that. I would ask, and I know, you know, this just happened last week, you gave us some detail in follow-up to Councilman Reed's question or comments, but if you have any other sort of details that you could share at the present time with regard to what type of action you all are planning to take, particularly with regard to, you know, these closed off areas, with regard to the cafeteria, maybe if you could, you know, express a little bit more detail for the members of the community that are here. And if that is something that you are not yet at this point able to discuss, if you would make it a point to make that information available to not just the council here or the trustees here, but also to the community at large as soon as you can, so that the community knows that the sincerity of your organization in making those endeavors.
Thank you. First of all, about the comments with employees, phenomenal employees. They need more support. It's a journey. We're not there. But I'm proud, Frank, I'm very proud and just honored to lead such a great group of individuals. We need to continue to support them more than what we are. I say we, meaning myself, my team, which we are doing. Related to what actions are we taking, we institute a daily checklist. And not just in our dietary, but every one of our departments, that the department leader every day goes through and checks as an added assurance. You know, I don't think you can overreact in a situation like this. So there's daily checklists that are completed by the department leader. It's turned in to our director of quality, who's sitting back in that room as well, and who gets those every day. And then we have random validation rounds as well to make sure somebody's just not checking the box. So to have that accountability with it. With what this is also bringing up areas we're doing very well in, where do we need to focus on, where do we need to invest some additional resources. So not just for the kitchen, but all the areas. Related to the units, these units are shut with double doors. The double doors are not locked, it's a hallway. So from a fire marshal standpoint, we need to go through that process so that it's badge only. It wouldn't have, it still would have had access by this individual, but if somebody were to say, just to make sure with extra security that we have it for employees only in this area. So we are working through that process. As far as the rooms, and the reason why you kind of see it still in its natural state, I want to get the environmental testing back. and I'm looking at the experts to guide me, and even what kind of floor do we put down. I am looking to the experts to tell me, is it an epoxy? Is it what type of floor? So the inpatient rooms themselves, besides adding extra, making sure that they're extra secure right now, we have not gone through those closed areas and just renovated them all and refurbished them. And I think that's why individuals that see it are seeing it still in its raw state. That I don't have the response back yet. We hopefully will have that before the end of this week.
Hey, could I just add one thing? And that is, the first phone call I got was from my mom. And I'm old. I'm getting to be old. And I will probably be struck dead for saying this, but I despise Facebook. It's as I told my mom, it's made every little guy in the world Walter Cronkite. And I am the biggest believer in America in freedom of the press. I love our professional news people who cover things. I don't believe that it's all fake news like we hear a lot. I believe what our press says. And so, that being said, I guess this is an editorial statement, is just because you see it on Facebook doesn't mean it's true. I was Friday, I was in some of the rooms that people were leading people to believe was black mold and stuff. It wasn't. I was on the phone with my mom right after I left the hospital on Friday. And I said, Mom, my only regret for Friday was that we didn't have the media with us when we went in those rooms to see. It wasn't like a surprise, like we're only going to go in this room, but we're not going to go in that room. We had free reign to go in any room we wanted to. And one of those rooms that we went into, I'm sure my wife was in 32 years ago, or 35 years ago when my daughter was born, because that was the section of the hospital that we used. When my daughter was 12 years old, if it wasn't for the emergency room over there, she would be dead today. She went in the emergency room with a heart rate and a respiratory rate of 1. She should have never lived. For 24 hours, we were on a ventilator. I have all the confidence in the world in that hospital. And like most people in our city, we consider that our hospital. And I love the fact that Clay and the staff of this hospital, they buy into the fact that is our hospital, that it's part of our situation, part of our city. And I hear from Mr. Franklin at least once a month, culture, culture, culture. And we all know there were some issues at our hospital once upon a time. And we're like just climbing this hill, and we're just getting ready to start down and having the wind at our back, and then you have something like this happen. And it's just remember, not just this hospital, but you know, when you flip Facebook on tomorrow and somebody says that your neighbor down the street's doing something, don't buy it. You know, check it out. Get the facts. I believe we got the facts on Friday, and then a couple of other people got them on Monday, that I would trust my life with that hospital. Editorial over.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I would just like to say thank you, Mr. Franklin, for your transparency and the tour that you gave us. And a lot of questions was asked and answered, and we thank you. And I also like to ask that your staff stand up, and thank you all for coming. Would you please stand? Thank you all. And thank you for all the questions we asked you and with your transparency, and we appreciate it. So I would say go forward and continue to make good things happen in the hospital where the community can really enjoy coming to a place where they feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I look forward to the future partnership and one of accountability and one of enhancing our community and our hospital being a strong part of that. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any further discussion on this current item? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned from the West City Hospital Authority.
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Franklin.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor.
in
Thank
the
you.
hospital. I now call us out of recess from the City Council meeting and call it back to order. We will go into our consent agenda. I need to have item 7 of the consent agenda pulled. We do have a consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda so that the council members, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of all council members or members of the audience wish to discuss an item, be removed and heard in regular order. Again, the number 7 needs to be pulled.
That's correct, C7.
A scrivener's error with regard to item number 14 also. Item number 14 should be, is your mic on? Excuse me.
So move to approve the consent agenda except to pull items number 7 and 14.
Okay, I have a motion. And I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Katie Hawk, you requested to discuss item 7 of the consent agenda. Could you come to the podium, please?
Item number 7 is discussion consideration of designating an approximate 9-acre area of the Skip Recreational Trail located at 7250 Northeast 23rd Street as a monarch butterfly preserve.
Could you state your name and address, please?
Katie Hawk, 701 South Timber Lane.
Yes, ma'am. What can we do for you this evening?
Well, thank you. I hope you didn't pull that just because of me. I was
Yes,
coming up to
ma'am.
cheer you on. So I just
Well,
wanted.
we need some cheering on.
Well, good, because I was absolutely delighted to read that on the agenda, that the city is making efforts towards establishing monarch habitat in Midwest City. So many of you may know of me from animal shelter efforts, but my career is conservation, and so by day I actually serve as a coordinator for a statewide monarch action plan that is being coordinated by 40-plus organizations. It is a very large endeavor, and it also.
Hey, Katie, can
Yes,
I
sir?
interrupt you for just
Yes,
one
yes,
second
sir.
before the press leaves? While them being here was extremely important for that story and it needs to get out, stories like this should also be on the news as well. Go ahead, sorry.
Point of order for the press.
Well, no worries, Councilman Reed. We will be reaching out to the press about this, certainly as many as well. Well, I just mean, once this plan actually gets launched, the plan doesn't actually launch until April this year, once the monarchs begin their migration going north. And being that Oklahoma is centrally located, we do have quite a number of efforts going on to help save the monarchs. And really, I'm just here to cheer you on and then say we are a resource. We have a lot of resources available, biologists, volunteers, seed resources, plant resources, et cetera. And just let me know if we can be of any help. I have handouts about the collaborative, about the statewide plan itself. It also involve municipal efforts, and there's a number of communities already on board, and I'm just, hoorah, go Midwest City.
Okay,
Well,
well, give us
just for the information, we've also, and I've sent Mr. Sullivan the information on pollination areas as well to plant different species of plants throughout our parks to encourage pollination. So we're looking at that
Fantastic.
as well, and thank you for the encouraging words.
Oh, you bet, absolutely. So, yes, you want me to just hand these to you, or? Okay, thank you.
And,
one reason we pulled it is because it has Northwest 23rd. It's just a correction.
Oh, we need to fix that one letter.
Yeah, it has Northwest, so it's Northeast. So
Yeah.
that-
Very well.
That was it. That's why
Well,
it's
thank you,
pulled.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Move to
Katie,
approve.
maybe you could get Oklahoma City to do one on Northwest 23rd Street too.
Maybe.
And Mr. Sullivan, I think, needs to visit with you.
Move to approve.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on item 7? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Eads, you want to talk about 14?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's a Scrivener's error
Yes, ma'am.
with regard to item 14. The individual that I'm asking to be appointed to the park board is Adrienne, Adrianne. Last name is Ayers, Ayers. And other than that Scrivener error correction, I would ask that the individual be approved to the park board, please. She
Second.
stands ready to serve.
I'll second motion.
A motion and a second, and we blew that one big time, didn't we? Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this nomination? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Thank you. We'll now go into the discussion items of our agenda.
First item is PC 1929, discussion consideration of approval of the revised preliminary plat of the Turtlewood Addition described as a part of the Southeast Quarter, Section 7, Township 11 North, Range 1 West. Mr. Harless?
Well, as the council may remember, this item was continued from the November 28, 2017 meeting. Some of the surrounding residents approached the council in order to express their concerns for the development as it was developing, more the drainage and the trash issues, the erosion and sediment that was washing down to the detention facility and then on to the neighboring properties, the next 2 or 3 properties to the west. At that time, staff recommended that we continue this item until tonight so that we could move forward and try to get the surrounding property owners and the developer and the consulting engineers to come together and try to come up with a resolution as to how to resolve some of these issues. I think it's important that we had a number of meetings. I don't know how many phone calls. I know I was in a number of meetings myself. I know Patrick Menifee, as a city engineer, sat in on a number of meetings, and then I certainly appreciate Councilman Moore's effort into trying to reach a resolution on this to satisfy all those involved. I think, as Councilman Moore pointed out in our meeting up to about, 30 minutes ago, because that's why we're not able to make a staff briefing. Councilman Moore pointed out that although the water is going on to the neighboring properties, there is also a right for the developer to develop the property and to try to do that within the ordinances. And as we are all aware, the drainage ordinance and the retention detention ability, the science behind that is not always extremely accurate. With that said, I think in the meetings that we just came away from, taking into consideration what with some of the recommendations that Mr. Peeler gave at that council meeting, the developer consulting engineers took some of that into consideration. They extended, doubled the size of the detention facility. I think at that point it was recommended that they reduce the outfall of the existing pipe, even closing it off to drainage while the rest of the development continues. Take that water and take it south and then take it west around the properties. To be fair, these proposals haven't had a chance for Patrick, the city engineer, Patrick Menifee, the city engineer, to evaluate those. Those are coming to the table as we speak, and even in the staff report, you'll notice that we were getting this information at the last moment. As I'm sure we'll hear from the applicant and the surrounding property owners, I would like to keep in mind that staff would like to consider moving forward with this in the sense that doubling the, taking into consideration what Mr. Peeler suggested in increasing the size of the pond is going above and beyond the ordinance, but also eliminating any type of runoff onto the surrounding property at that point until full development. But also, more importantly, this will give a chance for this to kind of work itself out in the sense that this is not the last time we will see this development. This is the preliminary plat. As it goes forward, you're going to see some final plat information, and we're going to get a couple more times to make sure that the developer and the consulting engineers do as they say they're going to do. They're going to try to control some of the trash and debris that goes over into the surrounding properties. But as we move forward, I think I'd like for the council to keep that in mind, that staff, and I don't mean to speak so much for Patrick, but this will also give him a chance to run some of the numbers and for us to continue on this idea of resolving the issue. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
So what's your recommendation, Mr. Harless?
I'd recommend that after we listen to the surrounding property owners, unless there's some new information brought to light, that the council approve the preliminary plat with the idea of increasing the proposed detention to the size that we talked about, but then also taking the 24-inch outfall pipe and reducing it to approximately 6 inches. Those details will have to be worked out. It would also, I think that it was recommended by the consultant to raise that pipe so that at such point as the development is built out, that pipe could then be opened up and it would be kind of a secondary flow onto the surrounding property owners, maybe more in line with what some of the original flow was pre-development.
Are there any further questions from Mr. Harless? I do believe we have one resident present. Sir, could you approach the podium and state your name and address for the record, please?
My name's John Earl, and I live at 2305 South Webster. We had a meeting last Thursday, about 4 o'clock, with 3 property owners, Bo, myself, and Dell. The only person that was there was Patrick and these 2 gentlemen, not Billy. He had a conflict of meetings. So we was represented, the city was represented by Patrick. He was in and out. What we discussed at the time with the 3 property owners and the engineer was to extend that pond all the way down to the end of their property and make it deeper and wider, and plus have all the drainage go south and go by the railroad tracks. And I just spoke to Bo, and he told me about this 6-inch pipe, and I know where they came up with that, because at the end of the meeting, I said, has anybody irrigated any pasture? And everybody said no. And I said, 6-inch pipe, irrigation pipe, will put out a lot of water. So I wonder where that 6-inch came from. And then, when we left, we had an agreement with those 2 gentlemen over there that we're going to do this. He had a map, everything. He rolled it up afterwards and said, yeah, I'll get back with him. And then I came here at 5:30. I seen all these 3 gentlemen go up with their little maps. And I'm a property owner, and I wasn't allowed to go up. And then Bo came down and says, yeah, they want to cap that, and we'll see what, we might make adjustments or whatever. I don't want to hear that, because we're living with this. We need something in writing that all the flow will go down there, and that 6-inch pipe won't be there. All their water from their development will be going south.
Sir, I think that was what the agreement is and what was proposed. Now, as far as we had no idea that the meeting was going on, or we could have made sure that you got upstairs. I had no idea that's why you were here. So we would have gotten you upstairs. And I believe that, and I met with the developers this afternoon myself, and they showed me what they were planning on doing, extending that, just like was proposed in the last meeting, extending that drainage ditch out to the end of their property and trying to get outflow going to the south. I think that's what they've recommended. Now, I'm not an engineer, but I think that's what's been recommended according to their drawings. And so I'm at a loss as
Because there's, at the end of their property, south, the elevation is like 1269 elevation. And right where that pipe, the 6-inch pipe, is 1277. So all the water from the streets and everything, is it going to be a retention basin or a detention basin? Because we don't want the chemicals and asphalt chemicals and whatever to even come across our properties. And then on another note, they have a sewer transfer lift station. I started doing some checking, since it's going to be a homeowners association. It would cost the city, if the homeowners association didn't come up with about $500,000 to $1 million to replace that. Have you even thought about that? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Peeler. And we do, in all fairness, we do have to give the developers a little time to show us what they have come to do.
Certainly, and I've seen that. Bo Peeler, 2302 South Webster Drive. Thank you all for your time. I think y'all remember me from last time, possibly. I handed out a few things, pictures and what have you, of the drainage issues that we've experienced. I've kind of become somewhat of a point person or spokesman, so to speak, or a contact point, and I think sometimes when you get a call, you react and at the last minute and you try to be here, and that's what happened tonight. So I apologize on record to John for not calling him and getting him up here with me. But what I would tell you and want you to understand is the water flow now that we are experiencing as it is right now is absolutely 100% not acceptable, and I think I made that point last time. With the extension of the pond taking up approximately 4 residential lots, making it deeper, and I'm not sure if it's wider or not. I understand that's going to cause it to hold more water, and that's a good thing, because if it holds more water before it starts draining across our properties, of course that's better, because maybe the rain will end before it causes problems. Raising the existing drain pipe that's in question here was proposed as a solution this evening, and fixing it to where it's a 6-inch pipe to where not as much water runs through there. I'm not an engineer either, but what I do know is I've lived on my property 18 or so years, and I know what kind of water I had in the past. I understand that there are calculations. I understand there's rainfall totals to all the areas. I understand there's a geological survey map that shows water, intermittent streams coming across from one pond to another, going across my property. But I'm still gonna explain to you all with all sincerity, I could always drive my tractor across that low area. I never lost use of the back part of my property, and I always could mow it. And that's not the case now. So with this new change, one of the things that was mentioned upstairs a little while ago was that it would reduce the water to half of what I've experienced or what the records and the calculations show. Not here to argue the calculations and the records, but what I'd tell you is half of that is still more than I ever got before. So, you know, I think if you all remember, I said I took a wait-and-see approach last time. I believed the engineers. I understood what Patrick and Billy was saying. And I'm somewhat reluctant to jump in with both feet, but I don't have a leg to stand on per se in terms of whether or not this new engineering solution is going to work or not. So, you know, if they do that and it works over time as they're developing and we see the rainfall this spring and it's okay, then, you know, I'm going to be okay. But if it's not, I'm going to be standing here again. And then finally, draining that to the south, the strategy or the plan now is to let that empty to the southern boundary of our properties, which will still be running across portions of my land, and it would make it still subject to erosion. So I would really like some consideration for riprap or something back there that would eliminate that problem that could happen in the future, because water over time, and when my kids are there, when I'm long gone, I don't really want them having to deal with the erosion that this can cause. So that's my piece.
Thank you, Mr. Peeler.
Mr. Mayor, before you transfer to the developer, I have a follow-up for Mr. Peeler. Mr. Peeler, I'm concerned though about your comment about, you know, if this works the way they intend, so be it, and that'll be good. However, at the same time, if it doesn't, I'm going to be standing before you next spring, or at the end of spring. You know, what we've found is that we have more and more projects where we're sort of paying for the sins of the past and the present. That's what I don't want to see happen. You brought us some pictures the last time you were here before council that showed a really extreme situation with the drainage issues that you're dealing with currently. And I understand there's been some meetings that have occurred. My question to you is, have you and or the other landowners, again, I asked this last time, I'm going to ask it again, have you all consulted with independent experts, either engineers or attorneys, with regard to the issues that you have with this drainage on your own accord?
Not yet.
Is there a plan for you to do so? Because we're kind of at a point here where, and Billy, forgive me, but I mean, we're talking about the preliminary issue here, and you've mentioned this could come before us again.
It will come before you again.
Okay.
As far as other additions, it will come before you again as far as additional development phases.
But, you know, the cost that's going to be sunk, and Jeff, I'm going to ask you to jump in here and help me sort of find my way through this if you can, given your expertise, okay? The cost is already going to be incurred with regard to the placement, the drainage efforts that are going to be undertaken. Fair?
Right.
So even if it comes before us later with regard to additional development, it's going to be at the reluctance, I'm going to assume, of the developer to want to jump out there and spend that much more money to correct a drainage issue that we could get right the first time. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, that's correct, but this is an ongoing development. They'll have to come back and have other work approved. And if they're experiencing some problems, Patrick's explaining, and Billy, that there should be some time to correct it. My problem with that is I'd rather, you know, I was telling Bo, I personally think downsizing the pipe, and it's just, I mean, I'm not an engineer or an attorney, but reducing the size of pipe will alleviate a lot of that water. Now, they're still gonna put a large pipe in, but reduce the size of the orifice so only so much water can go in on the further north portion and push more of the water to the south. But again, and I said in the meeting earlier, the developers are doing, I think they're doing what they need to do. There has to be a way to develop the property. They've done the proper engineering, and they have a lot to gain by it, and the city has a lot to gain by it. But what I don't want to see is these neighbors being back up here again with some major problems, and how are we going to solve that?
That's my
And-
concern, exactly, Jeff. As well as, my question goes also with the idea of raising the pipe. The raising of the pipe, to me, even if you shrink the outflow diameter to 6 inches, whatever size you want to utilize. 6 inches is what we're tossing around, so I'm going to use that in my hypothetical. If you raise the height of the pipe, are you not also increasing then the velocity that water projects out with?
No, I mean, and they can explain it better. Basically, they're raising the pipe so the further south part to the back of their property will drain first. A 2-inch rain, there may be zero water come out of the 2-inch pipe. If it's a 5-inch rain, there's going to be more water come out of the
Just because of
smaller
the-
pipe. And then they agreed to shut the pipe off completely during construction where they don't get sediment. But, I mean, they can explain that better.
Could we call the developer up and let him present what they planned, and then we can further discuss this?
I apologize, I just wanted to get some framework
Don't apologize.
before we
It's, those
started
are
down
good
this road.
questions. Could you state your name and address for the record, sir?
Yeah, good evening. Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers, 815 West Main, Oklahoma City, and I kind of apologize for my voice. I've been fighting the flu, so trying to get over that. Again, thanks for hearing us again tonight, and I want to thank Patrick and the property owners, Bo and John and Dale. We've had meetings with them. Actually met on site with Dale on his property yesterday, looking at some things. He was gracious enough to let us go into his property and take some pictures and look at the situation there. As Bo explained, he gave pictures at the last meeting and gave you guys a handout. And on the last page, he had a proposed solution where we extend the pond and take the water to the south. We took that to heart and we ran with that. We did calculations on that. We've done designs on the pond to increase the capacity of the pond, to increase the depth of it. So as Billy was explaining, the pond has twice the capacity of what it does now. So we have done a lot of effort into that, and I want to make that clear. We didn't take Bo's comments and just toss them away. We're working diligently to try to resolve this issue. And the other comment about the trash and the erosion, we submitted a letter. Mr. Sharifi is here representing Home Creations. They sent a letter in writing. I gave it to Patrick where they promised to be diligent about cleaning up any trash issues that happen with construction and being diligent with the erosion control. And promise, if anybody has any issues, call them and they'll get out there and get it taken care of. So they pledged to do that. I also have Mr. Muhammad Khan from my office. He's a partner in our firm and also our drainage expert. He's been working with me on this. So I'm going to turn it over to him at this point to give you a better detailed explanation of our drainage solution.
Mohammed Khan with SMC Consulting Engineers, 815 West Main, 73106. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for meeting with us, Ms. Ward, and the member of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to come here, clarify some of the pending issues. What Billy had mentioned earlier was in the line that we follow the recommendation or the request of our neighbor. We want to be a good neighbor to them. So we followed what was possible for us by extending the pond to south, increasing the capacity of the pond as much as possible. In fact, more than what is required for this size of development. We did that. Not only that, we added additional supplement pipe to allow the discharge of the stormwater runoff to the south of the property along the railroad track. We analyzed 3 different scenarios. In one of our meetings, excuse me, in one of our meetings, we met with our neighbors, and we mentioned to that our intent is to completely eliminate the water off your property. But bear in mind, we are all entitled to our opinion. We're not entitled to creating our own fact. The fact is that this area historically has received water in the past. There's not one agency, but there are multiple agencies. Their record shows that this area had received water, but we're not gonna go in the past. I'll look at the positive of today's meeting is that we're increasing the size of the pond by twice its capacity. We're proposing to reduce the size of the outlet pipe across Mr. Peeler's property by a significant margin. And we're also offering to eliminate any stormwater discharge during construction to address the concern Mr. Peeler has that the sediment may have been coming from this pond during construction. Now, one thing I want to mention to the council here, that this pond is a detention pond. It has a permanent pool elevation of 6 feet. So, and the outlet of the pipe is set at 6 feet higher than the bottom of the pond. So if any sediment comes in from the construction side, it will stay in the pond, coarser particle. Now, we all have lived in Oklahoma. We know that we have a lot of clays here. So there's a lot of suspended particles, and it takes a long time for clay to settle. So that's maybe what some of the reddish, what you may see in the stormwater runoff when it leaves the site. But by having the detention pond, it should help with the sediment. Not only that, once we're increasing the size of the pond, it will help with the sedimentation and our offer to shut down the outlet to the west across Mr. Peeler's property that should completely eliminate any release of sediment coming from our side. I want to be clear that coming from our side. Mr. Peeler's property is in a path of historical pathway. Not only stormwater used to come from Turtlewood addition, as well as there is some other area which goes across Mr. Peeler's property. It just happened to be the low area. There are physical features. You may go back 20, 30 years, you will find all those physical features which reflects that this was the path of the natural flow of water. But going back to our increased capacity, yes, we eliminate that, we increasing the size of it. So we can analyze 3 different scenarios. The one scenario was it follow more than what city's minimum standard development guidelines are, and then develop this property. So back in 2013, when this study was done, we followed the procedures and submitted for the record, and the construction proceeded. When we heard about those concerns, we went back, and then we considered another scenario that what we completely decide to eliminate any stormwater release from our property across Mr. Peeler. The problem with this is that if we divert the water from one drainage basin to the other drainage basin, then we're creating another problem. The property owner to the south of us would be in the same situation. Yeah, like for example, so property owner to the south of us would be in the same situation. He'll be here in 2-3 years complaining about the same thing, that he's receiving more water from our side. So the balance of the solution, we thought that we reduce the size of the pond. This pond has capacity more than what is needed. That should help to lower the stormwater release across Mr. Peeler's property, and also allow the water to go through the south. Now, if we have completely eliminated that, for example, hypothetically speaking, we walked through this area, and I wish our drainage system, existing drainage system downstream of it was large enough to accommodate all of the stormwater from our side, but it's not. Right at this concrete flume where the drainage inlet is in the Frolic addition, that's really where the area gets flatter. So our concern is that if we completely divert all of the stormwater from our side to south, neighbors who live in Frolic addition would be experiencing the same thing what was raised by Mr. Peeler, that he's seeing more water. So a compromise or a balanced condition is that we still leave two outflow structure. We raised the outflow structure across Mr. Peeler's property, so he would not be experiencing any stormwater flow across his property whenever it rains. We're reducing no flow absolutely at all for 2-year event. Now, these are just number, but these are statistical number driven based on some mathematical calculation. And we offered all calculation to your city engineer. We also offered that anyone can go ahead and hire the third-party engineer. We'll share our information with them. Having said that, we will stop release of any developed flow for a smaller event like 2-year, 5-year, but we want to have a provision in case if it really rains heavy, like 50-year, 100-year event, then there will be a natural overflow across what is the established path based on historical evidence there. So that was presented to members of the council, and this is what we would like to proceed with it. Like your staff has suggested, that this is not the last time we are here. We'll be here, and if this thing not working, then obviously it behoves upon us to make sure it works. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Billy, this is a preliminary plat, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so any further additions to this PUD will have to come back before council, correct? Or planning commission and then council?
It'll come back to the planning commission and council, but I think that I think that the developers as consulting engineers have expressed that when they do this, that they feel like they're going above and beyond what they're required to do. And there was an option of going to another engineer, but I think that that what was related to us was that if they do go to another engineer and they find that they have way over designed this, that they will simply go back to the old design. And that's not
We
not
have
something else
we've gone 90+ days without a significant rainfall. So with that being said, is there any further discussion on this?
I have a follow-up question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, your comment was if you find that this is not working adequately, then is your comment that it behooves you all to correct it, or is it your comment that you all will be responsible to correct it?
Well, if we find that it's not working correctly, if we find that there is erroneous calculations, if we find that there is incorrect data submitted in the report, then we'll be responsible for fixing it. If we find that the studies we have done are correct, and at a later time, if a third party is involved and their recommendation or their findings that what we submitted was wrong, we'll be responsible for it. Beyond that, I'm not here to say that if in the opinion of some of our neighbor, our solution is not working, we'll volunteer and fix it. We have to understand the fact as ourselves that there is a historical baseline we have to follow. And if we are somehow violating those historical baseline, then we are at fault.
But you do understand that in the opinion of your neighbors, if they find that the solution is not satisfactory, they're going to come back to the city council and want it corrected.
Okay. Now, I would really like to say that what is observation is subjective observation. And I use the word subjective because your perception is maybe different than mine. But what is common thing for all of us to agree is follow City of Medway City guideline and exceed those. What is for us to follow is the standard engineering principles, what are used in our practice or on consultant to use those. And if we are following those things, then we feel like it, that we are on the right side of this situation.
Okay, sir.
Thank you for your time, sir.
You're welcome.
Sir, if you don't develop this land, what happens to his property, to the property around there? Does it continue to hold water?
I'm not following you. Would you
I'm
elaborate,
saying, okay,
please?
you are the developer, right? And
Right.
everything that you are supposed to be doing, putting the pipes, is going to alleviate the problem from the water that is just settling on the land. So if you all do not develop in that area, what happens to your property, sir? Does it continue to hold water?
So if nothing is done.
Nothing is done.
It gets worse.
It gets worse.
But if they do this, it probably gets better.
Right.
Right, yeah.
And so those are kind of the two options here. If they
So-
don't do anything and it gets worse, you don't build, you don't do anything, it gets worse, or they try to
Develop.
mitigate all of this and make it better.
Yeah. I might add one thing here,
Okay.
that there was a study done back in 2013
Okay.
for the existing shape of the pond. In our opinion, that study, the data presented here in that study was correct. It was not challenged by anybody. That study is still out there for anybody to challenge it, more than welcome. But instead of going in the past, we look at the future and what is suggested here, that what was recommended in its study, we adding twice the storage. So there is no doubt in my mind it'll help the downstream property owner.
Okay.
Question?
Thank you, sir. Are
Mhm.
there any further discussions?
I think he's got one more thing.
Can I ask one
Thank-
question?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Have you all installed any of the, and I can't tell off the aerial, any of the streets, Cattail Court, Turtleback Drive?
Chris
That's gonna
Anderson
be
is the
south, kind of the south end in what's called Track 2.
The section we've designed was Section 5, and it's what we're calling Snapper Drive now, that comes down to 29th and goes up north and goes over to the west where the detention pond is. And also we made the connection over the big water line to the pieces to the west, or I'm sorry, to the east. That's all we've designed so far, was that last section that's been built, Section 5.
The north section.
Well, it's like I said, the road that's coming down to 29th Street, the entry, that's
Right.
running north and south, that runs up to the north, and then the finger that runs back to the west towards the detention pond. And then also the street that's back to the south a little bit, that stubs out that connects, back to the east to the existing subdivision. We didn't do all that, we just basically did up to the water line. All the rest of the stuff to the east was done by another engineer.
Okay. Billy, could you put a cursor on the southwest corner of that? Right. So is there any way, have you all looked at when I look at the proposed improvements, the site development plan map, and maybe Mohammed, this might be a question directed towards you. Is there any way to address how it would appear that the water that's coming into that southwest corner is gonna feed almost on top and straight into the detention pond? And if that's your point of release for that secondary release, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be a lot of room to contain that water. Are you following me?
Not exactly. Are you talking about the future pipe that discharges into the pond there?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let Mohammed explain that better. That would go ahead and fill up the pond.
There is a natural diversion along the existing topography of the site. And if we look at the immediate hard southwest corner of this property, where the proposed outlet is, and then from that point, if we go at an angle like a northeast easterly direction, that's really where the diversion is. So some of the stormwater generated by the hard southwest corner or southwest part of that plat will drain into that expanded portion of the pond.
So will the drainage into that pond there be just, I can't quite tell, is it just gonna be off of the street, or will it be from an extension of the storm sewer system?
Right, yeah, there will be a storm sewer system for the street. And
Okay.
then those inlets will intercept the stormwater from the developed lots as well as from the curb and gutter of the street and convey it to the downstream to this
I
extended.
guess what I was trying to ask is that in the ground right now?
No, but that area is not even developed,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you think that, I'm just trying to see if there could be an option to be able to move that storm sewer further to the north a little bit to create a little bit more space for the water to enter into, and otherwise it's gonna be, I think that water's gonna be coming, there's not gonna be any area for detention purposes, I guess is what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say.
And I think as we move forward with the final plat development of construction plans, there is definitely some latitude there to make the adjustment of the low point along the road.
Okay, okay.
In the comments that were made, it's that this item is being heard under the subdivision regulations prior to the 2012 update, as the original and first revised preliminary plat applications were heard under those regulations. Are those regulations, if you'll excuse the simplicity, but are they less stringent than the regulations that we have in place currently, Billy?
Are you talking about just the drainage in
Yes, sir.
particular? Or Patrick, do you have any?
No, ma'am. The provisions that were updated had no impact on the drainage and the design standards.
Thank you.
I think
Yes, sir. Go ahead and approach the podium.
Now, Billy, can you pull up the map for the extension of that pond? It was in color, I think. Yeah, right there. Okay. See where the existing retention pond is right now? You see how they have it going down like this? It's like a funnel. Why didn't it, and the map that we seen, it was the same width all the way down?
Can you answer that, sir?
May,
It's a good observation. I appreciate that. We moved the outlet of the pond a little bit further inside the property, so the outlet of the pond will not be directly falling on our neighbor's property. By keeping the outlet of the pond a little bit further inside the property, we'll install riprap, reduce the velocity of the flow from the outlet, and allow the storm water to kind of spread out, eliminating any gully wash or erosion, those problems. That's the reason that we pulled that outlet further inside our property and have riprap pad and everything. If we have kept the size of the shape of the pond exactly like this, then our outlet discharge point would be on neighbor's property. We wouldn't have any mean to control the velocity, exit velocity, and install any riprap or anything there without his permission.
Thank you.
Lisi's property is in that little notched out area. Their water goes west, and right at the corner of Bo Peeler's and Turtlewood, it comes down southwest into right behind that trailer park, and I walked it. There's a big pond back there, dry pond. And it wasn't dry. I talked to a couple of neighbors over there. It started getting dry when they started funneling all the water across our properties. And then, whatever they do with that pond, it has to go south because that's the elevation of the land right now, unless they're gonna take all this dirt and build it up and still have runoff on our property.
So let me just, back to what my original question was. If they walk away and they don't do anything, the drainage is just gonna continue to get worse where you are. Right? And your neighbor's saying the same thing. So my question is, are we gonna let perfect be the enemy of the good here? Or are we going to go with what everybody up there talked about in the very best interest, maybe not the perfect interest, but the very best interest of everybody involved, so they can build and you guys can get some better drainage going?
Well, that would be a good situation if their engineers would have figured this out before all this.
But we can't,
Now
one
we're
of the
in a
things on
mess.
the council that I've learned, unfortunately, is items that we inherit from the past, we can't fix usually.
Okay. See their lot right there at the end of, are they gonna build that up? Or is the pond gonna be up here and the house right here?
Well, I don't know.
Because there's no elevations on this, and that's the problem.
Well, no, I get that there are problems, but I think that we're trying to let perfect be the enemy of the good here. Or the better in this case. If nothing's done, your all's property suffers more.
It would have made sense to me if I'm developing a large piece of property, I would have about 3 ponds, 4 ponds on that to attract clients or home buyers.
And I get that, but that is, they can have 1 or 52 ponds. That's for them to decide how many ponds they want to have, so long as the drainage is taken care of. Bo?
Just say that I'm grateful that they're willing to do something, and I'm not really letting them completely off the hook here. But I am grateful that they're trying to do something because I want my property back like it was. That's all I want. No more, no less. There is an underlying issue that needs to be understood. And I understand there's math and data and, there's a fundamental disagreement on the amount of water input into this formula, whatever you call this formula that they use, that I disagree with. The historical water flow that came across my property, it's just not there with what I'm being told that they're using. If this expansion fixes that, and they raise this pipe and it turns into a 6-inch pipe and it runs across my property like it did in historical times when I lived there since 18 years, then I'm gonna be happy. My concern is that based on data and based on their calculations and all these formulas, this is it, Mr. Peeler, and that's all you can expect, then I'm not gonna, I can't stand still for that because it's different now. There's a new history over there. There's a new history. All the land's changed. It's different. And I know for a fact that I would have noticed this 18 years ago, this standing water. I would have noticed that. So I'm not making this up when I say there's water on my property that wasn't there before.
Nobody's, I think everybody, the developers agree that you've got a drainage problem.
Well, but how far do we go?
Jeff,
How far do we go to say that's good? That's what I'm telling you.
That's why my
Because it's gonna
question is, do
be-
we let perfect be the enemy of much better?
Well, I'm gonna know based on how long I've lived there, what it's like when it's done, and whether or not it's back to the way it was when I bought it, and that's what I'm after.
So I want to ask Jeff a question. 1, this is his ward, but 2, he's a builder and a developer.
Mhm.
You've been awfully quiet. What's your opinion on this?
Well, as I said in the meeting, the developers have a right to develop. I don't deny them that. I feel like property owners, at the end of the day, they shouldn't have to deal with, that they shouldn't be the ones that are put out and damage to their property. In my mind, the developers gain, the city gains. I mean, we do win as a city to get more development. And, you can't, again, I'm not a engineer or an attorney, but you can't, where your property, where the water enters your property and exits your property, you have to be careful not to change that. And I feel like the developers are tweaking that probably as much as they can, because they're putting more water to the back than maybe they feel comfortable with. And if we ask for a third-party engineer, I mean, they are giving up a few lots and trying to go that way to work with the property owners. But if they come back and said, no, they shouldn't send more water to the back, well, then the homeowners are in a worse position. But at the end of the day, I still, if I'm out there in a year or 6 months with the property owners, and I'm going to be disappointed, and I just think we need a method in these situations to where, we can help. But the developers are doing all they can do. I think they're going above and beyond what they're required to do. And as a city, we just have to ask ourselves, do we want growth, or do we want to let things sit in these type of situations?
With that being said, I think we've pretty well discussed this issue, and we've got all the information possible.
I got
Is
one
there any
question.
further
I got one
discussion?
question for Billy.
Yes, sir.
Billy, based off of, since your opinion counts a lot, based off of what you've heard, the maps, everything, has the developer and the architect done their due diligence to fix this problem, with the understanding that if it doesn't get fixed, they're coming back here?
Well, I think in this situation, bringing all this up at the last few minutes, I mean, we had to miss the staff briefing to go over some of this. I think that the developer has done what they've been asked by the surrounding property owners to make an effort to have a voice at the table, and that was given to staff, that was given to some of the council members, that was given to the surrounding property owners, and the developer and consulting engineers met at the table and came up with what seems to be a reasonable solution. I don't know what the unintended consequences are going to be, and that's what worries me. Because when we move the water to the south and run it down that railroad corridor, what's going to happen to it then? And are we going to affect people in that area? There's a pond in one of these subject backyards, and it dries up because we've now diverted the water. Well, the pond was built to have water and hold water, and now we're taking water and diverting it to another direction. So there's some unintended consequences that we haven't even had a chance to think through. But do I think it betters the situation for Mr. Peeler and some of the neighbors? Yes, I do.
So do you wish to have additional time to consider it? Is that what you're saying, Billy?
No, I
Or-
think that we move forward. And I'm kind of looking at Patrick. I think he's in agreement with me that
Patrick?
we move forward with this solution. We have a solution in front of us that everyone tends to agree on. Could it be perfect? I don't know that it will ever be perfect. I think there's water that was going across the property before. You can see that, from the erosion and from the ponds and things. Of course, there was water going across there before. But I think this will help. I think it's a good solution. I don't know if it's the perfect solution.
With that being said, Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion what?
I didn't have my speaker on. I've been chastised by Jill to make sure that I have my speaker turned on and I'm talking into it. So, with that being said, I make a motion to pass this.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a
Sorry,
motion
point of
and a second.
clarification, to pass it, meaning to a different agenda or to approve it?
To approve it,
Thank
sorry.
you.
The motion is to approve the preliminary plat for this area. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Let the record show that Ward 1 is no. Any abstentions? Chair recognizes the motion carries. Next discussion item.
This is PC.
One question. Doesn't this have to go back to the planning commission?
With the next plat, sir, and unfortunately, we need to move on with our agenda.
Well, since they changed all this, and shouldn't it go back to the planning commission to get their approval?
The planning commission's a recommending body, but yes, some of these sections that have yet to be developed will go back before the planning commission. In fact, at the next planning commission, there is another section waiting to be heard.
With the Plat 6 and everything, they okayed it, but now, since we discussed, now
Mr. Harless,
this is
could
going
you
to
take the
change.
gentleman to the side and make sure his questions are answered so we can move on with the agenda?
Yes, sir. Actually, Kelly, can you go ahead since we've got another on?
Next
Kelly
discussion
will help
item.
you. She deals with the planning commission.
This is PC 1933, public hearing with discussion consideration of approval of the Oakwood Landing final plat for the property described as a tract of land lying in the northeast quarter of Section 31, Township 12 North, Range 1 West of the Indian Meridian, City of Midwest City, Oklahoma County, Oklahoma. Mr. Arliss?
Yes, sir. This is a 20-acre development at 10th and Westminster, a final plat under the new subdivision regulations. And under those regulations, the final plat cannot be accepted by the council until those improvements are put in or until a bond has been posted. And the developer has chosen to post the bond. Staff, Planning Commission recommend approval. I will note that there were some questions about drainage at the Planning Commission on this, and staff has made an effort to note those addresses where there were some questions and to try to involve the surrounding property owners that had the questions when those drainage issues are dealt with at a building permit level.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We have a
Good evening. Chris Russler, 10907 Sarah Court. I apologize, I couldn't hear you clearly back there. What were you stating about overlanding?
Yes, you had the questions of the Planning Commission
Yes.
about the drainage.
Yes.
Yes, at the time of building permit and as this thing develops out, we've put some notes on the address files to make sure that they look at the drainage and deal with it at that time.
Okay.
I think that's kind of what you were requesting at the Planning
It
Commission.
was, yes, and I wasn't sure, I didn't know if you said it was on hold or what, but so you're just saying, from the Planning Commission, throughout the process and development, to work with you guys closely and.
Yes, that there's actually been notes on the files to make sure that they talk with you during when they go out and do the build. We do a drainage inspection now before the building is built, before the house is built, and they're to contact you when they do that to make sure that the drainage doesn't affect you
Okay.
on that.
Okay, and when does that process start or happen, or?
It could, it's whenever they sell the lots and they start the construction on those. I don't know when that would be.
Okay.
The consulting engineer might be able to answer that. You want to?
In this situation, the developer is the home. Sorry, Brad Reed of Crafts and Toll. In this situation, the developer is also the home builder. I don't know which lots they will go with first, but the plan is to start moving quickly on lots. So I'm not sure which ones are going to go first, but.
And I think my one question, and I'm not sure if Patrick, if this is directed to you or who answers. When I bought the property, the area behind it was nothing but trees, and since then, obviously, any development within the city of Midwest City is great to see. But they have built the grade level higher than my backyard. So when I look over my backyard fence, they built that level of grade higher than my fence. And in turn, my concern is the erosion towards my property and my fence line. That grade level, I guess, starts probably 15 feet behind my fence line, and then it's a steep grade down to my property. And I've met with, I'm sorry, Patrick, your assistant city engineer. Anyways, he came out, great conversation. But my question was, one, what are the rules, regulations, stipulations, and how high they can build that grade level? And then two, what I'm trying to avoid is in 4 to 5 years, what I was told, if there is an issue in 4 to 5 years, I'm to get with the homeowner at that time. Well, I'm trying to get ahead of it and avoid an issue now with the city approving this, with the developer obviously developing the land higher than my fence. What are the rules, regulations, stipulations behind that?
Well, the developer and the home builder will have responsibility to set everything up according to code before it's finalized out, before someone moves into that property. Long term, when you have an adjacent property owner, they'll have to tend to their own yard. So if over time, 5, 10 years from now, they start having erosion problems, the homeowner will need to address those.
Okay.
There won't be a long-term obligation from someone that builds a home and sells that to a homeowner to tend to their grass and to
Right,
their
yeah.
erosion problems, or the
Understand.
fence becomes rotted. Those things and those responsibilities eventually go to the homeowner.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but the builder and contractor are supposed to stabilize the soil in that
Yeah,
meantime until the
yeah.
house is built.
To be clear, yes, they have those responsibilities, and everything will have to be set up according to code and meet several different inspections before they're released.
Okay.
Did
Right.
I hear that you're worried too that they're gonna build up substantially higher than your lot?
Well, they did build a grade up higher than my lot. You look over my backyard, the fence, and you can see the grade level from where they built it up. I mean, you couldn't see anything prior to that, and they built that up.
But they can only
Higher.
bring that so far without having to build a retaining wall, right?
Yeah, that's correct, and they may have had to bring that up to flatten it out so there can be a pad on that, and once the home is started, the building is started, that grade may not be as dramatic once you see movement out there. And if it is, and if there is a vertical component to that that needs to be addressed, then yes, they'll have to put in retaining walls, make sure that it's graded and it drains properly.
How do you foresee go about that, or how do we?
Well, I would just monitor it, and as they build and get closer to completing it, if they keep building the backyard all the way up over your property line, then, bring it to their attention, or,
Yeah, please
don't
let
wait
us
till
know.
it's totally finished.
That's part of our responsibility, is we want to protect your interests as well as the builder's interests. And if you see something that concerns you, just notify us and we will come out, we'll walk the site with you and do what we can to help you.
Yeah. Will you be my point of contact, or who will it be?
Yes, sir. You can contact me and the engineering department. Brandon, my assistant, you brought up earlier.
Okay.
Will do a great job as well. But we're there as a resource, so if there's anything that concerns you, just reach out to us.
All right. Appreciate your time.
You bet.
What's that?
Being
With,
smart,
uh,
but if
with
it concerns
regard
you
to
with this
parliamentary
property, don't call it
procedure,
murder.
we were in a middle of the vote. So,
Thank you.
with that being said, I do have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Next item.
PC 1934, public hearing with discussion consideration of approval of the replat of Lot 6, Block 8 of the Point City Second Edition, described as part of the northeast quarter of Section 6, Township 11 North, Range 1 West, and as shown on the attached map. Mr.
Yes,
Harms?
sir. This is a little existing lot off of Bellevue and Westminster. This is a case where before there would have been a lot split done, and the change in the subdivision regulations allows it to come through and be reviewed so that all the easements and rights-of-way and proper measurements and stuff on the lot, the legal descriptions, all meet city standards instead of trying to do that by separate instruments. This is a good example of where the new ordinances work. Planning Commission and staff recommend approval since it meets all minimum requirements.
Is there any further discussion? Chair to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Next item.
This is PC 1935, public hearing with discussion and consideration of an ordinance to redistrict from PUD Plan Unit Development to O2 General Office for the property described as Lot 1, Block 1 of the Arbor Place Addition located at 9244 East Reno Avenue.
On this item, I'm going to have to pass the gavel to the Vice Mayor. I have personal interest in this particular issue, and I'm reclused.
Okay. I will take over. Public hearing, anyone here to speak against or for this item? Okay, that being said, entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Back to you, Mayor.
I think you guys should have changed seats for that.
Thank you for your valuable input, Mr. Reed. Next item.
This is discussion consideration of the police and fire quarterly reports associated with the Matrix and ESCI studies respectively. You have the reports from the police chief and the fire chief in your agenda package. Action is at your discretion.
You were briefed in pre-council, or any
Just
questions?
move to accept.
Both of them together.
Yes.
Move to accept the reports.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Ladies and gentlemen, we move into the public business and new business public discussion of our agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to bring anything to the council? If you do, we cannot discuss it as a council in any type of manner. Hearing none, there is further information. Any action needed on that?
No, sir.
Hearing no further discussion, we are hereby adjourned. I call to order the Midwest City Municipal Authority. We do have a consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda so the trustees of the city or Midwest City Municipal Authority by unanimous consent can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed on the agenda or on the consent agenda does not meet the approval of all the trustees or member of the audience wish to discuss or a proposed item, it will be removed and heard in regular order.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Ladies and gentlemen, we move into our new business public discussion of this agenda. Anyone have anything to bring before the municipal authority? Hearing none, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you, friend, today.